Hey there, Aquarius. How are you doing? So this is the start of the next 2-week forecast, taking you from the full moon to the new moon. It's a full moon in Aquarius on the 9th of August, right the way through to the 23rd of August with the new moon in Virgo. Now, this is an interesting time because there's not just one new moon in Virgo this year, there's actually two. And so this one that's happening on the 23rd of August is just the first, and the second one happening exactly a month later is also a solar eclipse. So there's a very, very strong theme at the moment with the new moon in Virgo, and where it sits in your chart is really going to be determining where there's a huge area of growth coming up for you. So that's what I'm going to explore in this forecast. Now, ordinarily, I usually do the full scoop part of this as well, you know, where I look at the moon phase we're in and a lot of information about the actual minutiae of all the different aspects, but I'm not going to do that this time because actually what I want to do is explore 3 real parts of what I see coming up, and I'm going to just show you on my slides, because what I'm really thinking of, there are like 3 key points here. You know, the first is that we're going through this period of revelation, like a big reveal. It's a time where the mess of being human really comes out. And we might notice where our mask has been dropping, you know, where we need to drop a persona. And I really see that that's coming up at the time of the full moon in Aquarius. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I have actually posted a really full forecast about the full moon in Aquarius. So there's that there if you need it. So it's bringing up a lot. And after that, we're into the post full moon period, and I really think that is pressuring us to purify. To me, there's an indication that it's time to refine. So we start with revealed, we come to refined, and we're really asking about what is so big that we can't ignore it anymore. That's my second big question. And then we're coming to the rebirth sign, you know, the side of this forecast, which is all about the new moon in Virgo. And so I really see this as us honoring the mess whilst not giving up the sacred. And so these are the 3 questions I'm going to be asking throughout this forecast. And that is, where has my mask been for survival? And what would I prefer to express? What truth about myself or my life has become impossible to ignore, and what would shift it? And then finally, what small sacred act of cleansing and reordering could help me restore faith in myself? And so I really think this is about the rebirth, hence why I've called this, you were born for this rebirth. This is a very, very strong time for our astrology right now. Now, before I bring up the 2 charts that I'm going to be looking at, I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone that has historically sponsored this channel and who continues to sponsor the channel, and also people who are sponsoring me via membership and community. I really, really appreciate your presence. I'm quite humbled by it, so thank you very much. So these are the 2 charts. We've got the full moon in Aquarius. And of course, I mean, this is the obvious thing, and I haven't even mentioned it yet. The full moon is in your sign. I mean, this is this is how big this next 2-week period is. And the new moon is coming into the start of your 8th house. So this is a very sort of personal transformation you're going through. You know, with a full moon, everything about your persona, everything about how you're being, how you appear to be is up in question. To me, I imagine that, you know, what you've been going through recently has felt almost too stressful to hold on to. Maybe you felt the pressure of being yourself. I really think that when we, have made a decision to protect ourselves in a particular way, a slight mask goes up, and before long we forget we're actually wearing a mask. It becomes part of our adopted persona. But after a while, and I think you see this with people that are really getting older, I think it takes a lot of energy to animate the persona, you know, to animate the personality that you've created for yourself. And so I really see that, you know, one of the difficulties about getting very old and starting to get out of your energy is you can't keep up that persona anymore. It cracks and falls off. But, you know, what's coming up right now, Aquarius, for you is that this full moon is... It's showing you the true weight of your persona. And I think it's actually much better to let that drop right now before it's kind of forced away, you know, as you get older and older. To me, this is a really good reflection point, because this first house is all about how you appear to be. It's all about the signals you're sending out to the world, and also a lot about how you are in your body. And so there's a real sort of change in your identity, so that you don't have to continue being someone that, maybe you thought you were once, but that maybe you're not. There's no need to fight anymore. You can allow this to just drop away. And so in the course of this 2 weeks, the moon is going to come all the way around and then up to the sign of Virgo and the 8th house, and that's where our new moon is. And can you spot the really amazing patterns that we've got going on here? So this new moon, it's the first of the 2 new moons in Virgo. This one's at 0 degrees. The other one later on will be at 29 degrees. But this is forming a yod, also known as a finger of fate, or referred to as a finger of God, the voice of God even. Wherever the yod is pointing, it's showing us where we have something that can help us move on. It's almost like a resolution. It's showing us where the immense pressures are pushing us, but where there is a point to resolve this. And you can actually see this new moon is being pressured by Pluto, and also pressured by Saturn and Neptune, and it's prodding us. So I'm gonna definitely explore this, because this new moon in the 8th house. Let's explore the 8th house for a minute. The 8th house is, I think, a place of very deep transformation. It really shows us the rites of passage we're coming up to. Maybe you've gone through a part of your life sufficiently now, and now it's time to take the next step. And obviously, these steps can be quite daunting at first, when you have to step out into something new. You might not have very good foundations where you're stepping, so it could feel quite risky. The 8th house shows where we can be resistant to some of these rites of passage. I always think there's a lot of inner psychology that's going on with the 8th house, so in the same way as the 2nd house is really showing us about our values, and not just the money that we're receiving and how we're earning our money, but our value. How do we value ourselves? Where is our self-esteem? If we got a really good strong sense of our self-esteem, where that's true, I think that's fantastic. The 8th house shows us other people's money and resources that we've got access to, but it also shows how other people are valuing us. Also, the flip side, how we're valuing them, but in particular, how they're valuing us and what bind that puts us in. How easy is that? And so I think in the 8th house, you come across things like shame, blame, guilt, anger, resentment, because all of those come from a relationship with somebody else. If there wasn't another person, there would be no shame. There would be no embarrassment. There would be no resentment. You would just kind of be pottering along, doing your own thing, sort of desert island style. But anyway, this new moon is showing up in a very deep psychological place that may have you feeling tested to push beyond an area where you felt challenged, shamed. Oh, that's such a strong thing. Guilted. Guilt really definitely lives here. And so there's some immense pressures, and these pressures are Pluto, first of all, in the 1st house, which I'm guessing you're starting to get used to this now. Pluto's been dancing around this area since January 2023 and permanently went into the sign of Aquarius on, I think, the 19th of November last year, and will be in this part of your chart for well over a decade, like 19 years now, I think. But he is pressuring this very, very strong transforming change in you. So, I know from my Pluto in the 1st house series, or Pluto through the houses series, I've had so much feedback from people who've obviously got Pluto in their 1st house, and they are the most strident, strong pieces of feedback about that video, because Pluto is bringing something out in you that can be quite confrontational. It's very powerful. You're definitely coming into a place of your power, and definitely not wanting people to tell you what your experience is, to push you around. You really want to determine what's right for you and to create some boundaries, and things aren't feeling right. And so Pluto coming into the 1st is deeply transformational. If you think of the phoenix, that's the creature, the mythical creature that I really associate with Pluto. It's a bit like a compost bin. You know, Pluto is bringing so much energy in, and it burns up. It kind of burns into ashes, or like compost. You know, all the bits you put into a compost bin, it all breaks down into, you know, like this beautiful, rich compost. But then from that, something new comes back. Just like, you know, the phoenix comes back. It regrows all its beautiful feathers. It comes back to life. So, you know, Pluto is the epitome of everything crashing down and then regenerating. So there's a regenerative power, and this sort of regeneration of your personality is absolutely kind of pushing you into the next step to really see beyond the things that are holding you back from just stepping over, climbing the next step, or where it is, climbing up or climbing down or to the left or the right. It doesn't matter, but there is this push for you to do much better. And of course, you know, often we have to go to, you know, the level of trauma, to the level of our resistances, our shames and our guilts, to be able to move beyond, because of, you know, all of those mechanisms help to keep us in place and help to not push us forwards. So yeah, that's definitely one thing playing into this. The next one I would say is Saturn and Neptune. Now they're hugging really closely at the beginning of Aries. Soon Saturn's going to go back into Pisces, but these two together in the beginning of the third house, wow, these are, I think, showing where your local community has got really quite stuck, where it feels like you might be wanting to take responsibility in your own community. That might be part of your transformation. You might be like standing strong in your community and standing for something really, really kind of radical, and really spiritual. Neptune here is absolutely crying out for some spirituality in your community. And so there is, I think, this like desire to bring heaven to earth. And maybe you're the person to do it, or maybe you're in the community and other people are doing it, and they're so kind of strong and strident and forceful with this energy that they're creating. And that is pushing you forwards. You know, maybe it's pushing you away from them, but whatever the strength to do things within the local community, to teach, to share, to participate, alongside this, I must kind of strengthen myself, even if I have to destroy myself in the process and then regenerate myself. All of, you know, both of these energies are playing out and pushing you beyond your comfort zone. And so, yeah, I don't think you're very comfortable at the moment. Most likely you're feeling quite uncomfortable because you can sense this coming. You know, to me, it just feels like, I guess, the closest I've got is either diving into a freezing cold Atlantic Ocean, and I'll chicken out of that. But the actual closest thing for me was probably giving birth. You know, you've got your baby inside your belly, and you get bigger and bigger and bigger, and there is this moment when there's absolutely no turning back. And I think you're getting to this stage where there's nowhere to go. You can't turn back on your own development now. To me, it feels like your evolution, your emergence as the Aquarian ascendant person that you are, that emergent soul is coming forwards, and like a baby, it's not going to stop. It needs to be born. And so I really do think sorry, I'm using such strong words, but that's how it's feeling as I'm looking at this chart, is that, you know, this is the challenge right now. Is, you know, how do I use this emergent energy coming from inside me, and how does this real me start coming forwards? That's pretty big. And I should excuse myself. I mean, I don't know if you know me even. If you're new to this channel, my name's Louisa, by the way. But my style is to talk about these charts as if I'm talking directly at you. This is how I am when I'm, you know, in my consultations. You know, it feels really personal. It feels like really intimate, as if I'm in the room with you, you know. And to me, this just feels like such a deep process you're going through. So yeah, from the full moon. So let's just take it back a bit. You know, at the time of the full moon, you can see there's all of these very sort of exact combinations of aspects between very, very slow moving planets and Mars. And they're actually making what looks like, if I was to turn it up the other way around, it would look like a house. We've got this rectangle, and it's got a roof on it. It's also like an envelope, like if you're sending a letter to somebody. And I really see that this point here, which is Uranus in the beginning, right at the beginning of Gemini, I think this is a real kind of popping point where things could really move quite quickly. You know, to me, it's capturing the energy of this dynamism. And so I think Uranus is where this energy is about to kind of explode out. And for you, it's in the 5th house, which is about your creativity. It's about what you're birthing, funnily enough. It could have to do with children. To me, it's all about finding something really that encompasses who you are. This isn't you like rebirthing yourself to just become a similar kind of person and kind of do a similar job and kind of live in a similar way. This to me is a radical reclaim of who you are, or what you believe you're meant to be doing. To me, this isn't like, I guess my question to you is, what did you come here to do? Who did you come here to be? Because if you haven't been or done the things that you believe you were meant to come and do, to me, it just feels like things are hotting up and pushing you forwards. You're getting that nudge now, you know, like a parent pushing you forwards at church parade or something, just pushing you from behind. It just feels like it's time. And your creativity is part of it. And, you know, Uranus is also about consciousness, and you've got this really strong trine between Mars and Uranus and Pluto. It's really zippy, really moving fast. And of course, Uranus is one of your ruling planets. And so it's no surprise that as Uranus is lined up in these really strong energies, that you're being pushed. Now, Uranus is also going to make an exact sextile with Saturn on the 12th. The 12th is a really, really strong day, in fact. You know, Saturn and Uranus don't come into aspect very often. So this is very rare, but they're working together. I mean, they're going to be in this kind of aspect for quite a while, but this is the moment of it being exact. So it's a very, very rare thing. But this is about where you've got discipline and determination and patience to get something done, and the consciousness coming in that's necessary to get it moving. This is fantastic. It's kind of architectural. There's this beautiful sense of form and invention, you know. So I don't know how you can, you know, I don't know what you do for a living or, you know, who you are as a human necessarily. But what I do feel very strongly is whatever you're trying to create and give shape to can be really executed in a beautiful, innovative way. And anything that you're doing that feels innovative and inventive and inspiring and high level consciousness, these are the ideas to follow up on. There could be a very strong philanthropy as well associated with this. Now, on that day, Venus is also in a conjunction with Jupiter, and it's beautiful. They're in this lovely, they're cozying up in the 6th house, which is all about how you run your life. And they're also making a beautiful trine to the North Node in the 2nd house. So to me, when you're really being yourself and feeling into the generosity, the peace, the grace of following what's in your heart and believing in yourself and feeling that sort of faithfulness, to me, it just feels like you're going through this decision process at the moment of, am I all in with myself? Or am I kind of all in with everything apart from myself? To me, once you make that decision to go all in with yourself, it feels like your faith returns. You know, that animating force that maybe you believe in. Maybe that animating force is you. I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know you, but whatever you believe to be your animating force, to me, that just comes on so much more clearly. There's so much more clarity. And to me, once you're sort of connected back to the animating force, it feels like you know what you're meant to do, how it's going to happen. You're feeling it into being. Very, very, very strong. So there's a couple of other things I want to share, and then I'm going to go back to those questions and just, give you some thoughts on that. So on the 19th, the sun is making a lovely trine to Chiron. Now, Chiron has been in your 3rd house for ages. He is making a very uncomfortable square to Pluto. That's not stopping anytime soon. And he's also going to be making a square to Venus around the time, well, actually on the day of the new moon, the first new moon. But the thing that I wanted to point out was on the 19th, the sun is just here and it's making this really strong trine to Chiron. Now, this comes on twice a year, but it's significant because the sun and Chiron working together like this, to me, is an indication that there's some deep healing that you've almost signed off on. To me, it feels like, finally the penny drops. Something is making sense. And for you, it's making sense in terms of your roles in community, your roles in your neighborhood, your role to do with belonging, and any hurt to do with that sort of joining with humanity, joining with people in your community, joining and feeling comfortable and nourished and supported at home. And there's something about you and like partnering. To me, it feels like maybe you're trusting somebody much more than you've ever trusted. And in that like level of trust, something magical happens. It feels like you're coming out of that disbelief in unity. I do think you've believed in unity. I mean, the Aquarian energy is all about unity consciousness, but maybe you knew it intellectually, but not really in the heart. They're two different ththings. But what I really see is any fears that stop you from believing in unity consciousness, I believe they're going. I believe that, the part of you that was maybe hurt and preventing it is settling. It's coming into a completely new way of being. So I think this is something to celebrate. It does feel like you're moving forwards and you're able to trust fully, not just in the head, which is very, very easy for you to do, but to really sort of trust deep in the heart. And so that's really leading us on to the new moon. Again, this new moon. Woo. One thing I didn't mention earlier on is Mercury's retrograde. And he goes direct on the 11th, which I think is something to celebrate. In fact, I'm releasing a video about Mercury going direct and how you can quickly get back into your flow. It's literally just 3 or 4 minutes. So it's worth a quick look. And I'm tagging it onto the end of this video. So at the end, when you can click to watch the next one, it's lined up. It'll be released on the 11th, but you get a preview if you click on it today. But this as Mercury is going direct on the 11th in the 7th house, I just think this is moving you forwards in terms of your relationships with people. And of course, as Chiron and the sun come into their alignment and then you're coming into this new moon, to me, just feels like there's some extra trust things building, which makes all of this possible, that you can be pushed by your sort of Pluto need for power, and you can be pushed because something in the community is asking you to stand up or stand away. And to me, you're about to resolve something, move beyond your guilt, your shame, and step into a new transformation and step beyond what you've managed to reach before. So this is very, very significant. So if I go back to those questions, the first one, where has my mask been for survival and what would I prefer to express? I think I spoke a little bit about your mask earlier, but other thoughts as they arise. I think there's like the Aquarian motif is really about freedom and space to be yourself. And, Mars going into the 9th house and challenging what's going on in your local community and with local norms. To me, it feels like you're challenging everything that's felt local and pedestrian and anything that doesn't feel like it's changing. To me, it feels like there's a natural up in arms energy about that. But at the same time, I think one of the hidden sides of your mask is actually that you also like the norms. Uranus is all about sort of progressing and creating change and moving on to the next level. But you can easily throw the baby out with the bathwater. Saturn is showing the regulation. Saturn is showing that there are some other ways of doing things. And to me, I think the Saturn side of you isn't fully expressed. I think it'd be very easy to push away from anything that feels like it's controlling you from the outside. And yet some control is quite helpful. So I think in terms of masks, and obviously, you've been going through quite a few masks with like Pluto coming in. I think your mask about being independent was there for your survival, like, I don't need you, I'm fine, where you're toughing it out and kind of disconnecting yourself from other people because it's safer, it feels much better. I actually think you want to sort of express your vulnerability a lot more because there's a lot more freedom in it. When you, if you really want true freedom, the freedom comes from being honest and being able to share that maybe you're scared about intimacy. Maybe there are some times when you feel a bit exposed in friendships. Maybe that's why it's really easy to work with your friends because, there can be agreements as to what everyone's doing. And so again, that takes out some of that anxiety. But maybe the mask you're dropping is your need to always be moving, your need to be free. I actually think there's greater freedom when you drop that about yourself. And in terms of what truth about yourself or your life that's become impossible to ignore, well, I think that's really speaking to this change that's coming up. You can't ignore the fact that there are so many factors of change popping up in your life right now, and that there's this growing creativity that just keeps coming up. It won't stay down. I think anywhere where you're trying to stay normal and stay in your lane, I think it's difficult. So to me, it feels like you're in this kind of devil in the deep blue sea. You're in this place, this balance between, are you going to kind of throw it all away and be super independent, or are you going to stay quite conservative and stay close to your overall design or how you were raised? And actually, it's very easy to get into the polarity of this. You're either this way or you're that way. But there's another way, and that's integration, and that's using both of the energies, and that's shown beautifully between Saturn and Uranus. And so the elephant in the room is that you don't need to be extreme. The thing that's impossible to ignore is that you go from one extreme to another, when in fact, the easiest thing to do would be to combine both aspects and see how they work together. That would create something a lot more dynamic, and it would give you a lot more choices because you can lean this way and you can lean that way. So, I think there's something very dynamic in this central space. What small sacred act of cleansing and reordering could help you restore faith in yourself? For that, I think something to do with guilt, shame, and blame and anger would be very helpful. It might feel a bit difficult, but I wonder if you could contemplate for one moment some of the changes that you might be about to go through, and consider, when you consider them, notice what little back chat's going on in the back of your head. For me, it's over here. It might be over here. You might, I don't know where your inner voice is. But what comes up when you're considering the next big step? Is your inner voice saying, "Oh, why do you want to go do that?" Is it saying, "Oh, why? You can't do that. You're crazy." Listen to the inner voice, because it's going to show you what techniques you've used to dull yourself. Is it guilt? Is it shame? Notice these patterns, I think, is the first part of self-care, and then start transforming them somehow. Now, I don't know how you'll do it exactly, but there are books, there are seminars, there are websites. You can. There are so many different ways of releasing shame, blame, guilt, and anger. You could go on a bit of a retreat, but ultimately, I think that just having the conversation with yourself and being able to speak to your inner mind, I think that is part of the unraveling of this. It's almost like you're coaxing yourself, you're coaching yourself, in fact, almost like a small child that's a little bit embarrassed to step up and take its first few steps. To me, it feels like you need to encourage yourself to speak out and to reveal your fears. I think when that comes out loud and clear, and remember, this part of your chart is a really secret part. The 8th is a really secretive part. So you're going to have to really work with yourself with some kid gloves and a little maybe a carrot on a stick. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I think you need to really listen to yourself, listen to that part of yourself that's been shut down. And that's just the start of it. But to me, that's a deeply sacred act, really deeply sacred act. And I think when you realize you can talk yourself round, I think that's going to start the restoration of faith in yourself. The last thing, and this is the fluffy bunny version, this is Venus and Jupiter in their lovely restorative conjunction on the 12th. And the lovely the trine to the North Node in the second house. To me, this is really yummy. And it's really showing you where you can create some space for yourself out of your day-to-day routine. So like in terms of an act of trust and hang on, what was it? Sacred act of cleansing and reordering. I think if I was in your shoes, I might start looking at my life and start looking at all the different things I do and ask myself questions such as, is this loving? How is this bringing love forwards? How is this sharing? How is this creating intimacy? All these sort of questions about love, about caring, about generosity. And you might find that a lot of the parts of your home, the things you've got stored up in it, the behaviors you've got about your home and your habits are steeped in fear rather than love, and in survival rather than acceptance. Another thing you might choose to do rather than physically do it, because actually tidying homes can be quite exhausting, you might just sort of meditate into putting love and generosity and compassion into all the different parts of your house, anywhere where you feel like your habits and routines are sort of keeping you stuck in place. So I'm going to leave that there. I hope that was helpful to you. A bit random at the end, but hopefully there's something of use there. And if you've found this useful, come join my membership. You'll find like we've got Monday to Friday forecasts, fortnightly forecasts with love and money. And also it's a time for, like-minded people to gather. We gather once a week and we chat and compare charts and learn new things together. So that's definitely something that's available to you. Also, if you'd like me to explore your chart with you in a personal way, feel free to book a session. All of the links are just below. So there you go. Thanks for joining me today. And hopefully I'll catch up with you again real soon. Lots and lots of love to you, Aquarius. Bye for now.